Defunding abortion. Republicans speak out about the need to keep the Hyde Amendment. Voting rights versus voting security. President Joe Biden weighs in on the national debate. Medical update. What we're learning about the Holy Father's hospitalization. And Washington, D.C. summit. How leaders from across the country and the world are focused on religious freedom. On EWTN News Nightly for Tuesday, July 13th, 2021. Thank you so much for being with us tonight. I'm Tracy Sable. This week, a key U.S. House subcommittee approved President Joe Biden's spending bill without a decades-old provision known as the Hyde Amendment. The amendment prevents tax dollars from being used to fund abortions. And that's not all. Pro-life Republicans say they plan to fight the bill the way it's written. Capitol Hill correspondent Eric Rosales has that story.
This is a major concern for all who believe in protecting the unborn and goes against the teachings of the Catholic faith. Listen to this. For the first time in more than 40 years, the Hyde Amendment has been excluded from the annual spending bill.
The Speaker and the President don't want to admit that unborn children are human beings because admitting it would make it hard to defend the fact that they support the right to kill these babies.
Senate Minority Whip John Thune took the issue to the Senate floor, saying the 2022 Biden administration budget is a slap in the face to pro-life Americans because it eliminates decades of bipartisan compromise by getting rid of the Hyde Amendment and other pro-life provisions.
Mr. President, if we can't agree that unborn human beings deserve to have their human rights protected, we should at least be able to agree that taxpayers should not be forced to fund the killing of unborn persons.
A recent Marist and Knights of Columbus poll shows 58% of Americans oppose or strongly oppose of using taxpayer dollars to pay for abortions. Pro-life groups say it's not just the Hyde Amendment that Democrats are going after. They've stripped the Dornan Amendment, which prevents taxpayer funding of abortions in D.C., and the Kemp-Kasten Amendment, which is connected to the international funding of abortion, doubling the funds to the United Nations Population Fund,
which have openly partnered with the worst human rights abusers in our world, such as China and North Korea, promoting their coercive abortion policies and forced sterilization of women.
March for Life Action President Tom McCluskey says he welcomes the fight to educate others.
I think the end result is they don't get what they want, yet we get more people to our side who understand the extremity of this position.
Senator Thune closed by saying the right to life will not be ignored.
And while Democrat leaders may deny the humanity of the unborn, there are a lot of Americans out there, a lot of Americans who recognize it.
The spending bill will soon head to the full Appropriations Committee and then to the House floor for debate and a vote, and then on to the Senate. At the Capitol, Eric Rosales, EWTN News Nightly.
Dozens of Democratic members of the Texas House of Representatives spoke outside the U.S. Capitol today after leaving their state on planes. They left after protesting Republican efforts to pass new statewide voting rights legislation, which they claim is unconstitutional. Well, as those Texas lawmakers arrived in D.C. to deliver their voting message, President Joe Biden flew off to Philadelphia with a message of his own. He wants to protect the right of Americans to vote against what the White House calls the onslaught of voter suppression laws. Former President Donald Trump has something to say as well. White House correspondent Owen Jensen reports. Owen.
Tracy, good evening to you. President Joe Biden has been under pressure from critics who want him to do more to protect voting rights. And today he warned there is an unfolding assault on the right to vote in America.
This is a test of our time, what I'm here to talk about today.
President Joe Biden at the National Constitution Center in Philadelphia talking voting.
The right to vote freely, the right to vote fairly, the right to have your vote counted.
But President Biden clearly knows the prospect of proposed voting legislation getting through a divided Congress will be extremely difficult. Two bills already face dim futures. And hanging over the current political climate, the outcome of the 2020 presidential election.
In 2020, more people voted in America than ever in the history of America, in the middle of a once-in-a-century pandemic.
To defend against cheating, a number of Republican-led states have been enacting restrictions on early voting and mail-in ballots and adding tougher voter identification laws. And former President Donald Trump issued a statement stating in part, Joe Biden is going to Pennsylvania today in a rush in order to stop the forensic audit that the Pennsylvania Republican Senate is in the process of doing. Philadelphia was a cesspool of corruption, which will soon be revealed by the audit, but they know it was not an honest election.
President Biden also said in his speech today, with all the recounts, court challenges, and court cases as well, the 2020 election was, he calls in his words, the most scrutinized election ever in American history. At the White House, Owen Jensen, EWTN News Nightly.
Pope Francis has named a new bishop for the Diocese of Covington, Kentucky. Bishop-elect John Iffert will succeed the retiring Bishop Roger Foyce. The 53-year-old bishop-elect has been serving with distinction in leadership and pastoral roles for the Diocese of Belleville in his home state of Illinois. Pope Francis continues his recovery in the hospital tonight. The Holy See press office says the Holy Father is continuing his planned treatment and rehabilitation, which will allow him to return to the Vatican as soon as possible. Pope Francis has been in the hospital since July 4th after a planned surgery. Grief amidst ashes where a coronavirus hospital burned to the ground in southern Iraq. More than 90 people died and more than 100 were hurt. The cause is unknown, but may have been an oxygen cylinder explosion due to an electrical short. Coming up, international religious freedom, why it's an important topic in Washington, D.C. A summit on religious freedom kicked off today in Washington, D.C. The International Religious Freedom Summit is a three-day event which brings together a broad coalition of people who support the rights of the faithful. The event's motto is religious freedom for everybody, everywhere, all the time. There are a number of speakers from around the world, including former Secretary of State Mike Pompeo. Joining us now is Ambassador Sam Brownback, co-chair of the International Religious Freedom Summit and one of the speakers at the event. He is also the former ambassador at large for international religious freedom. Ambassador Brownback, welcome back. Great to have you here.
Oh, it's good to join you again. I always love being on EWTN and just the show and what you guys do and the story of Mother Angelica. It was just one of my favorites. It's a great one.
Oh, it's incredible, and we're honored to have you here. Can you tell us a little bit more about the summit, why it's important and why it's so important right now?
You're just seeing all the world on fire, and these various religiously used or motivated actors, or they're claiming religion as a route of moving this on forward and doing what they're doing. In Nigeria, you've got this Muslim on Christian fighting. In eastern China, you've got the Chinese Communist Party persecuting the Muslims. In northern Iraq, you had the Yazidis and the Christians being persecuted by Muslims. It's just kind of like it's everywhere. And what we're doing is getting a lot of religious activists together to stand up for each other's religious freedom, so that the Muslims standing up for the Christians and the Christians for the Jews and the Hindus for the Buddhists. We will have all the major faiths of the world together at this summit. And our idea, our mantra is religious freedom for everybody, everywhere, all the time.
Yeah, so important. Can you talk about some of the speakers that will be at the summit and who you're really looking forward to hearing their stories?
Well, I saw two of them this morning. One's the head of the largest Muslim organization in the world, Pakiyaya from Indonesia, and the other is the head of the World Evangelical Association. They're doing a press conference today at Catholic University talking about the book they're writing together and working on religious freedom in each of their faiths. And I look at that and I go, praise God, that's exactly what we need, is the religious leaders coming together and saying this is an important human right. We're not talking about theology. We don't agree on theology. That's just, that we don't talk about it. But this is a common human right. And it's being 80% of the world's faith community is being persecuted or living in a country where religious persecution is substantial. So we've got to stand for each other, and as we do, I think we're really going to catapult this issue forward.
Yeah, and you had mentioned it's a sold-out event, so everybody there is going to hear those messages. For those who aren't going to be there, what would you like to say to them about religious persecution?
Well, tune in. They can go on our website, irfsummit.com, irfsummit.com. Tune in and listen to the various speakers. I would ask them to pray. And that's the most important thing that they can do is pray for it. But then also, if you can, find an area that you're interested in and become active in it. Find out what's taking place with the Uyghurs. Find out what's happening in Nigeria or in another country that you have interest in, or in Venezuela, what's happening even in our own hemisphere. And then start writing your congressman, contacting people about it, contacting your church leaders about it, writing even to those governments. It's a really interesting thing. If you advocate for an individual, and you can find websites that list prisoners of conscience around the world, the Youth Serve Commission has one, and you write to that government about that person, you might keep them alive because you've given them a name. They're actually noticed by somebody. They're mentioned on social media, and people are less willing to kill them than in secret.
Yeah, you mentioned a couple of the countries that are really, you have your eye on. Anywhere else? And also, let's talk about the United States. What's been happening here as of late?
Yeah, there are really a number of countries got my eye on. China just dominates because it's so big, and the communists are at war with faith. And then they want to export their model, and they're using technology now to do it with. So they're creating virtual prisons even if they don't have you locked up. Nigeria is a concern because it's such a big country, and you've got this growing terrorist movement in the northern area of Nigeria and the Sahel region of Africa that's using Islam to attack Christians, and it's bloody and it's spreading. And that one's got my concern as well. India is a concern increasingly, even though it's a big democracy, because you've got this sort of nationalistic Hinduism coming in, and they're not officially doing it, but there's a lot of communal violence and persecution that's taking place there, in the largest democracy in the world. So you've got these areas of concern because they're large, and in our own country, you've just got this real aggressive sort of secularism that wants to say, if you have a faith and it's got traditional values, then we don't want you in the public square. And we have always allowed people to publicly enter the public square with their faith, as long as they're peaceful, but you can come with your faith. And to erode that here is bad for the world, and it's certainly bad for us.
Absolutely. Ambassador, thank you so much for your time today. I wish we had more time to talk a really important subject. Thank you for coming on.
Thank you.
Up next, human rights, how one man tried to expose China's forced abortions. And caring mission, religious sisters seek ways to encourage women. As we reported earlier, the International Religious Freedom Summit began right here in the nation's capital today. Among the speakers is a lawyer who exposed a forced abortions program in his native China and spent 4 years in prison. Chen Guangcheng fled to the U.S. Embassy in Beijing back in 2012. Last month, he became an American citizen. He continues to speak out about human rights abuses in communist China, saying the government's Communist Party, or Comparty, is using violence to maintain control. And he says he hopes the United States will stand by the people of his native country. Chen Guangcheng is a human rights advocate and distinguished fellow at the Center for Human Rights at the Catholic University of America. He is joined now by William Saunders, director of the Center for Human Rights at Catholic University. Gentlemen, great to be with you both. Thank you so much for your time today. Guangcheng, I'd like to start with you. I understand you recently said the human rights situation in China is becoming worse and worse. I'd like for you to talk a little bit more about that and what is happening over there, and also if you could briefly tell us your experience.
Okay, yeah. Of course, the Comparty now prosecuted the Chinese people a lot. You can see in Hong Kong, the Comparty destroyed the individuals, judiciary, and now they tried to destroy the freedom media system now. So In mainland China, because the Communist Party tried to use the facial recognizing system to control the people, now the people have to stay their state or their city or their village. So the Communist Party said, oh, because the virus, so you have to keep there. The Communist Party continue to use the situation to control the people. In fact, that is surveillance. All the people have to listen to the Communist Party. If you go outside, the Communist Party will use force to punish you.
And Professor Saunders, I'd like to talk to you. Tell us how you got to know Guangcheng and also his work exposing the forced abortions over there in China, and also letting people know he's also known as the barefoot lawyer. Explain that to us.
Yes, his story is unbelievable, except guess what? It's true. So he is a democracy advocate. He's blind. He escaped from 24-hour surveillance by the CCP in his village in an amazing story by himself. So he's a determined foe of the CCP, the Chinese Communist Party. And when he was young, he learned about the law, although they didn't let him be an official lawyer because he was handicapped, but people came to him and asked his advice. And one thing he did was he exposed the one-child policy and all the forced abortions. He and a colleague of his published it on the internet. So after that, there was a show trial, and they put him in prison for 4 years. In fact, they accused him of being responsible for 90,000 unwanted births. Think about it. Wouldn't you like to have it on your tombstone? You're responsible for 90,000 people being alive. So they put him in prison for that. And as I said, when he got out, they put him under house arrest. They harassed him and harassed his family. But in a miraculous escape, he got to the U.S. Embassy and eventually came to the USA.
Oh, such an incredible story, and you continue your work. I also want to talk to you, Guangcheng, about something that you had mentioned about the Biden administration, wanting it to investigate the origins of the coronavirus pandemic. Can you talk to us a little bit about that? And then also, you've also been speaking about the anniversary of the Communist Party in China.
Yes, I think, the U.S. administration should stand up with another democratic countries to ask the Communist Party show what's happening about the virus, and from the result, the nations should punish the who created the coronavirus to make the whole world trouble, I think. Yeah, and that is very important, I think. If we ignore that, the coronavirus will happen again, not just one, maybe later will much more dangerous than this.
Absolutely. And one thing he says is that the Communist Party is a threat to the whole world, not just to the Chinese people, but also to the whole world, including America, as we see with the COVID pandemic.
Yes. The Communist Party not just prosecuted Chinese people. They are threatening the whole world now. Yeah, you can see the coronavirus make U.S. people died a lot, much more than Pearl Harbor, right? So I think the U.S. Administration should stand up with another country to punish the Communist Party. Yeah, if we ignore that, the coronavirus will happen more and more. I got some information from the communist military, some professional. They talk about the coronavirus 2017. They said that they make different virus together. So that will very poison. So they will make it a bio weapon against the U.S. I have the video.
And I know that both of you are going to be talking about this and more at the IRF Summit. Quickly, Professor, tell us why you feel that's important.
It's very important because China is a great persecutor of religions, all religions. Their aim is to have the Communist Party kind of replace religions. So Christians are persecuted, Buddhists are persecuted, Muslims are persecuted, Falun Gong are persecuted. I mean, they're the Uyghur concentration camps, the Tibetan Buddhists, they drove out the Dalai Lama and took over the country. In the churches, Catholic churches, they knocked down crosses. They have pictures of Chairman Xi at the front of the church. They read from his sayings. You have to sing songs about him. So they're trying to crush Christianity, trying to crush Islam, they're trying to crush Buddhism, they're trying to crush the Falun Gong. So they are a pretty vicious persecutor of religious freedom. So this summit and what we're going to speak about today is to talk about how religious freedom is being abused in China. The summit itself looks at religious freedom in the whole world. As we know, John Paul II said religious freedom is the first freedom. So it's first, it's most important. A country that doesn't recognize that does not respect human rights.
So true. And gentlemen, thank you so much for being here today. We're very grateful, and God bless you both for what you do. God bless you.
Thank you very much.
And finally tonight, Sisters Empowering Women is an event to reflect on the topic of care as a mission of religious women. The International Union of Superiors General seeks to proclaim the identity of apostolic religious life in all of its diversity. The organizations encourage dialogue and collaboration among religious congregations within the church and larger society. Joining us now is Sister Niluka Perera, coordinator of Catholic Care for Children International. Sister, welcome. Great to see you. I understand last week you were part of the event Sisters Empowering Women, entitled Taking Care, the Mission of Religious Women. Can you talk to us a little bit more about that and some of the topics that you spoke about?
Yes. Sisters Empowering Women is a series of webinars organized by UISG. In which it is discussed how the religious empower women through their mission. The theme for the webinar, July webinar, was Taking Care. It was the fourth event of the organized 7 webinars. There were 3 experts from the field of theology and psychology. I presented there the work of the religious sisters in Uganda, Zambia and Kenya towards care reform. We know in the globe, religious, especially women religious, are at the forefront in taking care of children. Also, we know the known and accepted method of caring for children is institutional care. By now, it is evident that institutional care is not the best solution for the children. Family is the best place for the child to grow holistically. So I presented at the webinar on how the sisters in those 3 countries try their best in changing the way they care for children by realizing the importance of the family for the well-being and the development of the child. I spoke about their initiative towards care reform and of the Catholic Care for Children movement.
Well, that is wonderful. And Sister, there's something else I want to talk to you about. I was wondering, could you talk to us about the work that you do for children, specifically in Zambia, Uganda, and Kenya? Tell us a little bit more about that.
CCC movement, we say Catholic Care for Children movement, is a sister-led, charism-driven movement to ensure children grow up in a safe, loving family or a family-like environment. The movement has started by the Association of the Religious in Uganda in 2016, and then it slowly moved to Zambia and Kenya. There was a reason for the religious in Uganda, also for Zambia and Kenya, to start this movement. The governments of those 3 countries, especially Uganda, has passed legislation that favors care reform. So the religious who provided services to the children in the institutional settings somehow were forced to find ways and means to respond to their government's requirements. I see the religious, especially the religious in Uganda, were bold enough to take this as a challenge, also as one of their responsibility.
Well, Sister, thank you so much for your time today, and God bless you for what you do. Thank you so much. Sister Niluka Perera, Coordinator of Catholic Care for Children International. Thank you again.
Thank you for connecting me with you.
And we thank you for watching tonight. For the entire EWTN News Nightly team, I'm Tracy Sable. Good night and God bless.